I first of all want to welcome you all for coming. Thank you. And just in case any people pop up and watch this later, they can know that this is the Decoding Abstraction Energy Embodied Journal Q&A to discuss any questions we have and have some fun. Overall, though, some people, you all know me, so it's a little, you'll have to just bear with me for a minute. But I want to introduce people to the fact that we are here for an hour and a half to go over some stuff. I want to do some things that are typical sort of, I guess, teaching Tom things. And the first one is just to let you know that we will be reviewing the book and any questions people have, and we'll just be having fun top to bottom. And then if you have any paper and any tool to mark or draw with, have that nearby so that you're ready to go. And it doesn't matter really if it's a pen or a pencil or anything. And that's it for the first moment. I want to pause for about 1 minute. So if everybody doesn't mind just taking a minute and sitting quiet. And the idea of this is just to let the previous world go by us and come to the moment we're in right now. So I'm just going to ask us to sit still and possibly not draw or write or think or anything. Just sit quiet. So we'll start right now and go for about a minute. All right, there we are, folks, in the room. Again, I'm going to do some things that you both don't need because you know me, but this is an introduction to me and why I wrote the journal. I wanted more abstract enthusiasts to share the world of creative action with, and I wasn't finding them online. And so I thought, well, I'll reach out with this and introduce what I've learned about abstraction over the years and hopefully get other people that want to learn more together. So part of me is kind of rigid and analytical and looks at histories and theories and all that. But a larger part of me is about spirit and play and having a good time and a kind of curiosity around childlike desires to discover new things all the time. And so I am not upfront a historian. So if there's any argument around a particular fact, I am a maker and an artist, and I'm happy to be that. But I've had people tell me like, this is not historically accurate. And I was like, well, we can go to the historians for that. But I'm a maker and I just like that part of me. Another sentence I say all the time is that art is not a product, but a human behavior. Came from Ellen Desanaki, an anthropologist. And basically, I asked, I was once teaching in Oneonta, and my students were a little apathetic about taking art. They thought it was an extra credit thing and they didn't really want to do it. And I said, why do you think the cave people were painting on walls and all? And they said, maybe just to decorate it, and I was like, really, you think that they were like Martha Stewarting the cave while they were like trying to survive like mad odds? And then they were like, oh well, maybe it was something else. And we started cracking up about what were cave people possibly doing when they were drawing all over the walls and making objects and stuff that weren't necessarily utilitarian. And I think for me, it's I used the word in this journal of energy embodied in the subtitle, and I think it's like a taboo word. When we say the word spirit, people frequently think in religious terms alone, and I think of spirit as much bigger than that, and I think many people do. And there's nothing against religious and a connotation of spirit. It's just that when I think of abstraction, I frequently think about kind of the spirit, the disembodied wholeness of things. And that's spirit for me. So that came out of experiences I had by going into trances during physical healing things that were probably related to pain and overcoming pain. And the body entered into automatic or autonomic, whichever, but systems. So the journal, we'll start with the definition of abstraction, which is drawing away. It stems from about 2,400 years ago when Plato talked about it that way, drawing away from the real things. But when looking around at it over the years, I found that there are many different histories that have talked about abstraction. And one of the earlier ones was the Brahmin, about 2,500 to 3,000 years ago, talking about um, the concept of an eternal reality or a cosmic kind of wholeness again. And this transcended dualities, distinctions, material forms, and was considered abstract. And so if we think of the word abstract, and I'd love to hear you all say a few words just about what is abstraction to you. So just to make it easy, Susan and Ryan, if you want to go first, you're at the top of my screen. What is abstraction to you? And anything goes. It doesn't have to be like, I don't care if somebody says purple frogs. It doesn't have to be, an academic answer. It can be anything that pops into your mind.
I think abstraction, when I'm dealing with it, it's usually trying to translate moment into a physical from one space into another. Um,
Right on.
you want to participate?
My stab at it would be signifiers that point to something beyond the signifier rather than being a thing of itself.
Uh-huh. Excellent. And Jen?
I guess I'm a person who has a tendency to work representationally, so abstraction's always been kind of challenging for me. So I think I tend to think of it as showing the thing without showing the thing, I guess. Like that's the way I experience it. I'm not good at it, so when it happens for me, it usually happens inside of something representational. And then I'll say, oh, wait a minute, that little part just fell apart. But it's still the thing, or it's still somehow about the thing. But I mean, however much that makes sense.
No, I think that they're all beautiful. So it's interesting. One of you was speaking about the physical and moving from one space to another. Another one's talking about the signifier and beyond the signifier, and then showing us the thing without showing the thing. They all sound like abstraction to me. It's like if you start thinking about like I guess the opposing force is supposed to be reality or realism or the thing, the object, the physical realm. But I think one of the problems with talking about it is speech, period. Words are so heavily embedded with thingness and not abstract, that I wanted to play around with the notion of embodiment. And that's why the subtitle was Energy Embodied, because I realized that so much of what I learn about abstraction comes through my senses. And there are the five external senses, which we commonly speak about, but there's 8 internal senses that are only activated by us, meaning the external senses are activated by the external world, whereas our internal senses are activated by us, doing artwork, moving our body, thinking, whatever. And I'll go over those a little bit later. Today, a general intro to today is that we have 2 cameras, so you can see one is on my desk. So if I have to draw something, you'll see it. I also have a thing behind me I can draw on if we want to go there. We will collect, since it's only a couple of us right now, if it becomes more crowded, I don't know if it will. There's about 40 people that have the chance of joining, and they expressed interest, but it's on very different time zones. People are from London, Germany, Singapore, Hong Kong. And so I was like, oh, just catch the recording if you have to. Don't worry about it. Don't stay up until 2 in the morning. But if you want to, if something isn't being answered, drop it in the chat. I have the chat open. I'll probably catch it, or just scream very loudly and I'll catch you and we'll do it from there. At the halfway point, we will take a break, run to restrooms, do whatever we need, just to give our brain a break. We are recording, as I mentioned at the beginning, so that everybody's aware of that. And if you're uncomfortable, turn your camera off. We will be doing some body movement stuff and playing around a little bit, and you can engage it however you want. And then I think, let's see if, a very important thing for me is that you draw and move and do as you can and as you will. Always determine your own boundary. I will tend to, because I like to push the edges of things and reach out and get a little weird and have fun in a weird way. I mean, we all like to have fun, but I think it's like I sometimes push people a little too far. And I wanted to make it very clear that I want people to set their own boundaries. When something is not working, you just do what you need to do. You do not do what I do. You do what you do. And if you want to try a little bit and get a little uncomfortable or challenge yourself at times, I think that's kind of exciting. But don't put yourself in any danger or any fear or any uncomfortability that is untenable. And along those lines, though, it's weird. A lot of what I experience with abstraction comes from suspending my disbelief of things, like my logical mind wants to jump in. And if you think about it, I use the term love and fear like a seesaw. I always think stay on the side of a little more loving action, a little more creative, and try to build up what I want to see in the world versus what is challenging, so challenging that I fear it and run away from it or whatever. And in massage, I was a massage therapist years ago. I worked in it. Well, actually, I'll be working in it tomorrow when somebody's in pain, but they ask you to suspend your logical mind for a couple minutes when you're trying to sense something, because if you use logic, your sensory apparatus are shut down so far that you can't sense nearly as much as you can when you suspend disbelief for a few minutes of your logical mind and just say, oh, let me try this and just see what happens for a few minutes. And then you might notice a feeling. A concrete example I can give you is a student that I was working with up here who was a soldier in Afghanistan, said she had no sensation below her knees. And when we did the exercise around the senses, the center sense of all the senses is nothingness. So she all of a sudden said, oh, so nothingness can be somethingness? Kind of along the lines of, Jen, what you were saying about showing a thing without showing the thing. It's like she realized that nothingness could be a sense. And so what she had below her legs could be considered a sense rather than a zero-sum game. And by that, she started to notice things that were beyond her acceptable range of sensation. And by the end of the class, she came over to me and she said, I can feel about 8 more inches of my leg at the end of this class, which is cool to me that it's still there, some parts of me. And that felt good to see that she found that. So do suspend as much as you can and protect yourself as much as you can. And if you need to just hit go, leave, just leave and don't worry about it. But I don't think that'll happen tonight. Your nerves and senses, your heart, I want to speak about for a minute. Your heart and your digestive system know what to do. They are on your automatic, or a lot of people call it the autonomic, involuntary or unconscious system. Your body's doing it all the time. There's a lot of stuff there going on that you can access along the lines of what I was just talking about, suspending disbelief for a minute and just kind of letting something happen, even though you might disagree with it for a moment, and just see if there's anything there any treasure to find that you can then pull into your logical mind if you want and analyze it. I find abstraction has been the greatest container for me to allow an entry point to all of those extended senses. The last thing I want to do is a simple exercise. If you have paper, that would be great. Get your pencil, and we're just going to talk about the 2 brains. The 2 brains we talk about when we talk about it with kids, we say, do you like pizza? And everybody goes, yeah, I like pizza. And then we say, do you like fish pizza? And then they all go, and they're like, do you mean sushi or do you mean, and they have to think. Those are your 2 brains. There's one that's just automatic and the other one has to go like, So I want to experience it physically in our bodies. So grab a whatever you have. And I don't know where let me see if I can draw here probably, and you can see it pretty well. Let me zoom the camera in a touch, see if it'll do it. Yeah, it will. Let me get under here so you can see what I'm drawing. All right, what you're going to draw is a very simple profile, like forehead, nose, lips, lip, chin. You get the drift. Really simple. Don't worry about it looking good. Don't worry about it being art. Just have a good time. Draw a squiggly line. And then kind of behind the head, like on the back side of the head, draw a line that we'll call it the center. So you're going to move from this center. And what I want you to do is just pause for a moment and listen to me. And then I want you to say forehead and sort of trace this line: nose, lip, chin, and neck, or whatever you want. Forehead, nose, lip, chin, neck. And then I want you to go over here and try to draw the mirror image of this by saying forehead, nose, lip, chin. And don't spend too much time thinking about it. Just draw that thing and let it be what it is. Okay, that's step one. So when we all finish that, I guess look up at the camera or shake your body and move around. Like penguins on the Arctic. All right, we're all ready? All right, so the second part of this exercise, you're going to draw the same half again and draw a line behind it, just like you did in the first exercise. So do that for a second.
The Discord notification.
All right. And this time, we're going to do it a little bit differently. So just watch me first, and then you'll do it right after me. Just instead of saying the words, you're going to think about where this line moves. If you were mirroring it, you'd think about it as like this is away from the center line and towards the center line, and away and towards and away and towards and away and towards. You get my drift? That you're going to move from that center line like a tidal rhythm on the water. You're going to move away when it goes away from the center line, and you're going to move toward when it comes towards the center line. Does that make sense? Yeah? So let's try it and do it real fast. Just go away and toward and 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 away. You good to go? Yep. All right. Do you notice any differences between the first one and the second one? And not only in what you drew, but in how it felt in your body, or how you thought, or what went down while you did it.
I think one was definitely more a little bit freer than
Was
trying
that
to
first or
try,
second?
second one.
Uh-huh. So what you're doing there is you're using your sense brain more than your verbal brain, right? You're starting to sense the flow of a line rather than thinking about that line representing a forehead and a nose and a chin and lips and all that business. And if you look at mine, it's a good example. This is when I was using language, and I drew almost like somebody had been punched in the face and their face is squished in. When I drew the second one, you can see that it's far more symmetrical. Go ahead, Susan.
Can you like expand the? It's a really little tiny thing. We can't really see your
Oh,
drawing that well.
if I can, let me see if I can choose let me spotlight.
Up there.
There we go.
How's that?
Yes.
All right. So this was my first one. And you can see that it got punched in. I was thinking the words, and I don't really feel it at all in my body when I draw that way. I just am thinking a lot more than I'm feeling. When I drew it feeling, you can see it immediately evened out for me. And it may be different for all of you. So I just wonder what you experienced. But one is more the side of your brain that is verbal, written, all that. This is the side that's more sensorial and intuitive and whatnot. So it doesn't matter what we call them because the two sides of the brain is sort of a lie anyways. I had a perceptual psychologist and a cognitive neuroscientist, neuroaesthetic scientist or something tell me that the brain is far more complex than left and right. And so it depends on how you're talking about something. Like if you say language is on one side of the brain, well, it depends if you're talking about grammar or you're talking about poetry. They're on two sides of the brain. So anyways, do you want to say any more, Susan, before we go to Jen? Okay, so Jen, what did you experience?
I think I agree with Susan. The sense of freedom is definitely more there. My two things don't look all that different, but they definitely felt different when I was, making an effort not to just think of like what you said, like coming towards and going away. Um,
And what did you
yeah,
experience when it was more going away and toward what versus the other way? Like what were the distinctions that you experienced?
fear. Because I'm so language oriented and I'm kind of an egg-headed, literal way I interpret things is tends to be very literal. So it's a little fearful for me to sort of let go of that kind of language and just flow like that.
Yeah. And you said at the beginning that you were more representationally oriented. And so that makes sense. And it's kind of nice to just flip to the other side of the pancake for a minute and then think, well, what's, like for me to think what's on the more representational side? What am I missing that's over there that I could experience? Because you know me well enough that I might be like, oh, get over it, Jen. Like, like just have a good moment. But that isn't fair. It's who you are and it's your boundary, and you have to respect people's boundaries. We can't get anywhere if we dominate each other. It's better if we share it and figure out a way to ride that wave together. Different places, different perspectives, but still together rather than me saying you're wrong, or something and saying, oh, you need to get over it, which I think happens too often. We've been discussing a friend of mine does trauma therapy, and we've been discussing boundaries a lot. And a kind of fun one to do is just stand in a room with another person and back up far enough where you don't feel them anymore, really. Even though they're there, you just don't have any sense of them. And then get too close where you definitely have too much of them. They're in your face a bit, and then back up until you feel where you actually have a boundary at the moment. And most people want to say that they have like a 3 foot, 4 foot boundary, like it's societally acceptable, like at a handshake boundary. But the reality of most people that I've done it with is they have like a boundary about 10, 15 feet away. They're like, I am over it. I have enough going on. I don't need shit in my space. And so they need a good amount of space. And we recently did it with in a hospital for disabled children in, that's what it's called, in Kuwait. And it was clear that they had very distinct boundaries that they wanted protected. And some of their boundaries involved their like buddies in the units. So they wanted to be like in groups of 2 or 3 and have that be their boundary. But it was okay inside that boundary to have very narrow boundaries because they lived together. And they obviously liked each other. But when the director came through, they were like, they screamed. They were like, "You're in my space." You're like this was like, ah, like get out. And I was like, hey, we're trying to teach them about boundaries. And I think this is a very significant thing in talking about something like representational versus abstraction, because it's kind of a fight in the arts. Back in the Renaissance, and just before, right at the beginning of the Renaissance, it was an argument they called disegno y colore. It was design and color. And color was considered emotional, and design was considered intellectual. And this was a very old argument that we still have going on to this day. And I think it sort of goes over into a duality that people think is in realism and abstraction. And to me, it's more fine-tuned than that. I always say that if you depict a bunch of grapes on a canvas by painting dots and colors that look like grapes, that's very abstract. And to paint a big canvas red and call it a red canvas is very real. So it depends on how we want to define it, whether it's realistic or abstract. And for me, it isn't an argument to get into. It's more like, what do we want to discover? What do we want to do, together? And so I want to jump back in a little bit to the book. So the reason I had you do that exercise right at the start was just to know that there's very distinct parts of our being and our brain. And just to know that we don't have to necessarily define them all that much, but just to know that they're there and we might go between those worlds, and that's okay. Now, I wondered if you all wanted to dive into questions about the book, or do you want to do a playful sort of embodiment warm-up exercise? And since I know both of you, I could probably guess, but go ahead.
I vote for an exercise.
Exercise.
All right, let's start, folks. So the first thing is we're probably going to have to stand up. You can do it sitting down, so don't worry if you're really at the end of your day and you're like, I'm not standing up. Sorry, dude. That's all right. But I'm gonna suggest it, and then we're just gonna jump in here. It's gonna be a little crazy, but bear with me. What I want you to do is listen to the rhythm of the music, move your body, try to discover an unexpected rhythm, but by doing this, we're not gonna force it. Like, we're gonna try to find it on its own. So I'm gonna start you out with something called like rocking the baby. Like, you're just gonna rock left to right or front to back or diagonally, but you're just gonna do a rock, and then you're gonna find a figure eight in that rock, okay? Any form of figure eight. So here we go. We're just gonna have a little music in it. We're just having fun. And we're imagining, what might make us uncomfortable on a very simple level, like just moving. You move your body all day long, but isn't it weird to move it in public in front of others? Probably not for some of us, Susan. But we love it and it feels good. What I'm asking you to do is playing with a movement, both physically and internally. You're kind of moving stuff around. And so we're getting our brain and our body brain to wake up a little bit. And at one point I started sweating just from nerves. I was like, I wonder if I'm agitating them or doing too much or doing this or that. And then I said, you know what? My intentions are good. I'm going to ride it out and have some fun. But to do that for a minute, is to show us a little bit about where our brain is at and where our body is at. And so one other thing is we have pain in our body. Almost everybody has some pain somewhere. And we usually focus on the pain. But what's interesting is there's a whole bunch of areas that don't have pain, that are just sitting there neutral and get no attention. So imagine a place on your body, anywhere that's in between a pain and another pain. Think like I got two pains and then I got nothing in between. So go to that in between space for a minute. Try to pause for a second and just find a place that is that in between space. And since we so often move away from pain, just look at the edges of kind of the edge of your pain going into the no pain, you know, like where's the pain sort of dissipate and go into no pain. And look at that no pain area, which is so much quieter than the pain area. And sit with it for a minute. And there's something they say about pain in massage where there is friction, there is pain. And so it's something moving against something else, right? But if the two could move together, there would be no pain. If there could be a harmony there. So if we just imagine some of the no pain area sort of bleeding over into the pain area, like kind of letting it saturate into the pain. We can even touch it physically, put our hand on it. We can try to stretch it or move it to see if we can get it to wake up, or go the opposite direction and quiet down, see what makes it wake up, and then go a different way to see if we can discover what makes it go down. And just notice what that body of yours is doing right now in that one area. And I don't think in the modern world we move so fast, it's hard to get to all these little moments. But for me, there's sort of the core, one of the cores, I guess the second core for me is my body. And what it's experiencing is the second core of how I enter abstraction, how I enter understanding it. And so if we want for a minute, I'd like us to put music back on, and you can name a piece you want. I could see if I have it. But we're going to listen to music, and we're going to scribble for a minute, and literally scribble. Like you don't have to draw anything. You just scribble like when you were a kid and enjoy yourself. And we'll draw for the length of a song. So it'll be a good amount of time. Do you have a song you all want, or do you want me to just pick something? Okay, I'm picking something.
I was like, I always got a song, but we're in I don't know if my music's gonna be appropriate for this.
Name it. Let me see if I have it. Go.
No, no. You go ahead and choose. I will not subject you.
I don't mind. Come on, it'll be a nice challenge. Go.
There's what's that new Dark Tranquility song? We Are Not Nothing.
Will it be We Are Not
Nothing.
Nothing? Oops.
Oh yeah, Gordura. Flying Whales. That got to find the whales.
Flying Whales?
Flying Whales, yeah.
Flying Whales, Gorgira?
Gordura.
Gorgira?
They're the ones who
All
did
right.
the French Olympics song.
Well, it's 7 minutes, so we might do 3 minutes of it or so, but let's feel it out and see how we go. But basically scribble and just think about what we just did with your body and let yourself scribble with more than your brain. Let yourself scribble with your whole body if you don't mind. Cool? Let's go. See if this works. Let's see. How's this?
Yeah, there we go.
Great. Okay, let's try a few minutes. You can just stay on that. Do that all night. Thank you, Susan and Ryan, for straightening my head out with the Zoom share. My phone is vibrating. That's
It's found the whales.
I know. It's like let's go, let's go, let's make it happen.
Now you know why I always run around saying, I've got to find the whales.
So let me remove the spotlight so we can talk to each other for a second. Basically, for me, that's tapping into some of that sense stuff we did with the profiles at the beginning, is going back to that sensing mind rather than the thinking mind. So Jen, I wonder, since the first round was a little shaky for you, and was this similar, or did it have a different quality to it?
I think it had a slightly different quality to it. I think maybe I was a little more relaxed about it. And I actually ended up doing 2 pages. So when I started, I was just really like, I'm looking at it, it looks kind of angry. But yeah, no, I think this was a little more, I'm a little more open right now than I was, when we first sat down.
That's nice. That's
Yeah.
nice to hear. I think it feels good. I wonder if anything came in that would be serviceable to representational work.
Good question. Well, I think, texturally, sometimes like just that overlapping that happens that is abstract, where you end up with different tones and different, something looks lighter, something's darker. Yeah, I suppose in that way I would think there is a relationship. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And Susan, what was that like for you?
Oh, I love that song a lot. So it's just good to just like groove with it.
That was a good one to draw to, and I think it was very appropriate for what we were doing. I mean, we're trying to get past the brain a bit, because I thought some people listening to this later, they're from around the world. Some of them have been asking me questions and stuff, and they said that they struggle with abstraction, I think, a lot more than we are right now, the way that they've spoken about it, at least. I don't know. But they said that they really struggle. And I think it'll be fun for them to have that experience and see some of the joy that was coming out of you in that moment.
Oh,
Yeah.
wasn't that evident?
And even the hesitancy we had at the beginning of like which song to choose and was that appropriate and whatever. And just seeing that that's not everybody's music, right? It's not an easy I don't think anything is everybody's music, but it's hard to find, it's not a wedding song, let's say, for the average person. When I put it on, it would be your wedding song, but
Right.
but when I put it on, they'd be like, Tommy, why did you choose that? So a couple we can either dive into like particular exercises in the book and explore a little bit. Let's see, we started at 6:30. So we are actually at the point of taking a break. If anybody needs a break, if you need a break, let's take it now. I don't know if anybody needs to stand up, stretch, do anything, or go to the restroom, or what
I
do they
probably
call
do.
it? Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's take a few minutes. Let's just take a few minutes. I'll go grab some water, and we all sort of take about 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it takes. When we're all back here, we'll start again. Okay. So just give yourself a few minutes to stretch out, get a snack or a water. I'll be right back. We're going to march on tonight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are we going to find the whales? Got to find the whales.
I am going to read a little tiny thing, which I've already mentioned, but abstraction, a short history of the word. Ancient cultures had ways of thinking abstractly or drawing away from the literal. In ancient Greek philosophy, Plato's theories of forms is one of the earliest and most well-known recorded examples of abstract thought. As I said earlier, about 500 years before him, 600, the Brahmin had a very clear definition of what abstraction was for them. And so I think it's a very Western position. And frequently when people speak about abstraction, they refer to Western 20th century painting. And it's a very narrow view of what abstraction has been. If you think about all the cultures that had patterns that were considered abstract, and ways of alluding to rhythm or things that were considered abstract. And it was just interesting to me that early in the Platonic theories that was he posited that there was a realm of perfect abstract form, which was only in the mind. It couldn't exist in reality. Once it was physical, it was no longer perfect. It was only when it was abstract and only a thought. And so it's funny to me that there was like that division again between what is ideal and perfect. And I'm sort of tired of a lot of the divisions in our world these days. And I like the idea of, I guess, abstractly saying that dualities can coexist and don't have to be opposed to one another. And so abstraction for me also does that. And there's a page in the book I'm going to read from, and it's called Dematerialization as a Political Statement. Lucy Lepard also saw dematerialization as a political gesture, particularly in response to the increasing commercialization of art during the 20th century. By reducing the emphasis on objects, artists could resist the commodification and market-driven focus of the traditional art world. This was particularly significant in the 1960s, of time of political upheaval and countercultural movements, when artists were seeking new ways to challenge established systems, including the art market. So a simple example would be artists that worked with language, or that worked with things that were ephemeral, didn't have a physical existence for long, and or were just in thought, like conceptual art was considered an abstract dematerialized form. Lawrence Weiner was one of the famous artists to just write a note or something and say, this is the art, and people could do it or perform it or make it any way that they saw fit based on the description that he created. But if you think for a minute, I always say that my students who think it's crazy that we're talking about all this dematerialization and stuff, sometimes I say, do you believe in love? And can you just hand that to somebody? Can you hand a chunk of love over? £1 coming your way. Can you prove that the way you love somebody is more than I love somebody? Can you prove you love your mother more than I love my mother? You know, there's no proof for these things, and we believe in them pretty strongly, that they have an effect on us and meaning in our lives, but they're not immediately, I guess, verifiable to people. Like, people think, no, that doesn't make any sense to me when you say that art doesn't have a form. So what I wanted to do tonight in the last bit of this class is just take that statement I just read, which is the dematerialization as a political gesture. And politics can be with a small p or a capital P. Capital P is more like you have, conservatives and liberals. Small p could be something like, you believe that we should be in a more regenerative mentality than an extractive mentality. That would be a small p. So you can take any position as political, but we'll take that dematerialization and we're gonna pair it up with an exercise. And let's just see where it takes us. So take something like this. We're gonna do this exercise first, and then we'll pair it up with that. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna read the exercise. It says, draw your breath. Take a deep breath, feel it rise. And right now you can just listen. We'll do it together in a minute. Feel it rise and fall. Use a pen or pencil to sketch the flow of that breath from inhale to exhale, like a wave or a mountain. That breath, what shape would your breath take if it was a landscape? No right or wrong, just let the lines show your breath's journey. So take a pen or something and a piece of paper, and we're going to draw our breath several times. So you might want to make room or lots of paper. for several versions of it. Make sure your pen is flowing the way you want it to. I have to find one that's flowing the way I want it to. There we go. And then we're going to take a breath. So we'll take a breath, and you don't have to force it even. You can just listen to the breath. Like maybe it's not even there at the beginning. And then you feel yourself inhale, and then it sort of drizzles out and leaves you. So you don't even have to force your breath. You can just let it be what it naturally is right now. And just noticing it rise and noticing it fall. And do a couple breaths. Notice if you can take your time. It's hard to breathe and draw, but notice if you can notice any change from the first one you recorded to where it's moving now without forcing it. So for example, I noticed mine went very sharply up at the beginning. I was kind of gasping, and then I was cutting it off at the end. Now it's a little longer. The rise is longer, and the exhale is sort of the same. So tell me, if you want to share anything about what you're experiencing, what are you noticing about your breath right now? In relationship to this drawing, this line, or you can talk just about the lines on the paper and what they start to do for you. I also don't mind silence in classes, so if that's uncomfortable for people, it's okay. You can sit quiet and just let it be. What's it feel like when you guys turn your paper upside down?
Another perspective.
It's funny that I think of a breath having an up and a down, you know what I mean? And then I see it having like a down and an up. Like in reverse, like thinking of my breath in reverse, you know? Like rewind.
I was having the feeling of balloons. That sounds so weird. I mean, like of balloons filling and then being squeezed out, I guess. Yeah.
That's not weird. That's awesome.
Yeah, I drew mine as a line, but now you're making me think I could draw it like a, you know,
Yeah, I started drawing like bubbles. I don't know how to like, right? And then when I turn it over, it almost looks like a plant or something. Like if you don't know if you can see that.
Oh, neat.
oh yeah. Oh yeah, Jen.
Sacks. But it's really weird with the breathing thing because I'm an ex-smoker. And I have all these weird images, like anatomical images of lungs in my head. I quit like, I don't know, in 2002, right? So it's been a long time. But bizarrely, at the time that I was quitting, I did all this research about the lungs, and I swear to God, so see this is the representational egghead thing. Somehow I have the little sacs, that image trapped in my head. So you tell me to draw myself breathing, and I just start, right? Somehow that's still in there. It's so funny. I feel like I just sort of tapped into something from quitting smoking in 2002. That's so weird.
I don't know if it's weird. I mean, it's part of your experience that's informing how you
Yeah.
you create something. So,
Mhm.
you know, it's it's kind of awesome.
Yeah, that bit like the sense of your lungs having all the little sacs, right? Little tiny, and then I think it's like villi or the little hairs and stuff inside there. It's crazy. Lungs are so wild. Yeah.
It was in the exercise, it says there's no right or wrong. Just let the lines show your breath's journey. So, it's okay to just have it right now, I think. And that's a nice part of the book. When I wrote the book, I didn't I didn't know if it was, going to be good or bad or whatever. Like I was just going along and writing different things and trying different things out and using things that I taught over the years. But then when I started doing all the exercises, like reviewing them and sort of seeing, okay, how do these feel, and filming for an sharing it online and stuff, I started having all these experiences where I was like, this is actually good. This is this is actually helpful to me when I listen to myself and actually
So
pay attention.
helpful. It's so helpful, Tom. It's because it's kind of things that I think are so expansive to my own personal perspective in a way that that I wouldn't find on my own. I'm not going to think of that. I'm not going to think of doing a drawing like that. But I think it does inform or feed into any other creative, you know, practice that I might be doing, actually. I think it's really helpful.
Yeah,
I have a question, not to change, because I would love to do more exercises, but I was thinking about scale, because I have a big roll of drawing paper that I've never used. And I was just wondering what it would be like to do some of your exercises like big, like, I don't know, a big piece of paper on the wall.
yeah, and it feels good to have your whole body talking
Yeah.
in for a minute and just clear the living room and be like, wow. I once taught at the Theosophical Society of New York on 12th Street in New York City,
Yeah.
and they asked me what I wanted, and I was like, I guess I just want like a big sheet of paper, like as big as you can make it. And I walked in the room and they had wall to wall, the paper was was covering the floor, and everybody was sitting in the middle of the room with like crayons and stuff. And I was like, holy shit, we're gonna have a good night. It was just one giant sheet of paper about 40 feet by 40 feet. They had
Oh,
time,
that's
and I was like, thank you.
good.
Everybody was like rolling on the floor, and it was just a wonderful experience of recording the our different bodies and getting to see how they mark made. And we drew circles, we drew like stretching and like coming back and seeing how far we stretched, and how we drew images of what we thought our body was shaped like, and then we traced our bodies and we were like, oh my gosh, I think I'm so much taller than I am, or my arms are like these flippers, I think I have flippers, and I actually have like a 6 foot range. And we were just seeing all these qualities that we had held for so long, and they were being unwound by what we did was we sort of just like with the breath work, kind of, you say like, let's say constructive things. We don't have to be um, flip about it or like whatever, but be positive and move forward with each other. So we were all talking about each other's, and something that somebody would call weak, someone else would call fluid, right? Something somebody would call tense, somebody would call strength, and we were just finding all these qualities in ourselves in relationship to the drawings being records of our internal experiences. And so often those internal senses, I didn't read them earlier, I can read it to you now. They are where the heck did I put them? Hold on a second. It's just so I get them all. Here they are. So they're nested inside each other. So I'm going to read from the furthest nest out down to the center and then back out the other way. Does that make sense? So it goes pain, temperature, rhythm, touch, sight, taste, nothingness, smell, hear, balance, harmony, pressure, and pleasure. And a scientist gave this to me one day. He said, like, oh yeah, you all think you have 5 senses. She's got a lot more going on. So the 8 are internal and the 5 are the external ones we usually talk about. So we have to motivate the internal ones, which are more like pain, temperature, rhythm, balance, harmony, pressure, and pleasure. And nothingness is the center. And so it's kind of fun to go into them occasionally, as we are kind of now in drawing like this. I also found something that was interesting to me about abstraction was the orientation of a page. When I'm drawing something that doesn't necessarily have an image yet, but it's just marks, like I'm not thinking of this as a picture in any way. I'm thinking of it just as a record of my experience of breathing. And then when I turn it, it has such different associations to me when I look at it from like, this is when I was breathing it. I almost dismiss it as like, oh yeah, that's an inhale, exhale. Yep, got it. Then when I turned it this way, it looked like the way different people stand and put their elbow out, and like it had like attitude. Like I saw my first one was like a real fucking attitude, and then the next one was a little nicer, and the next one was like kind of mellow, and I was like, oh, I was chilling out, and then the next one was like, you know, jumping the hump, and I was like, oh yeah, this is as I changed my breath, I went through all these characters of actually living more where I want to live than where I kind of spend a lot of time when I worry about things and whatnot. So the game we're going to play right now is we're going to take this drawing and we can do anything to it. It's not hard to light it on fire, but we can do anything to it to consider taking it, dematerialize it would be the easiest thing to consider. But if you want to add in as a political gesture, but you're going to try to dematerialize this drawing and spend probably 3-4 minutes or so dematerializing this, however that comes to your brain. And if you want to consider a political gesture, add that on, and then we'll talk about them in just a minute. So go for it. All right, wrap it up a little bit. If you need another minute or so, that's fine. All right, team. You all ready? I don't know if you want to share what you did or if you just want to talk about it, but what was coming of this experience, I guess, of taking this breath drawing and putting it through, extruding it through dematerialization as a political gesture? What did you experience? Susan, you're wide-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Wide-eyed and bushy-tailed. Oh gosh.
What did you experience?
Can you see it? I don't know if you can see it. It's kind of light. There we go.
Let me release so that maybe I can release I can tag you. Hold on. There we go. Yeah, I can see it a little bit. So what was that about for you?
Um, let's see if I can get it.
Yeah, I see it. It's almost like a rubbing of the space, like it's a soft rubbing.
Yeah, well, it's the breath was kind of like waves, but then it was, connecting, but then the chaos and the connection and the life of it all.
Beautiful. How did it feel when you thought of it as dematerializing?
Well, sometimes in the dematerializing, you also find a connection in in the chaos. So it makes its own like special layer of connection. It's not right or wrong. It's just multiple layers of networks within networks that all kind of coexist.
You
There we
just
go.
you just touched on three things that happen in the book. There's a section on multiplicities, on the fold, the idea of time folding, and all these notions, and the rhizome. That's beautiful. Yeah, quite the web.
Webs.
And did you touch on as a political gesture? Did it pop into your head at all?
Well, I think existence is a political gesture right now, and trying to exist between all the worlds that exist and that we have to navigate.
I hear you. I don't like hearing it, but I like that we can talk about it. I've especially been worried for the women in my life and just what they're experiencing. But I think I say to my students often, I work in communities that are experiencing a fair amount of trauma on a daily basis, and we say that the arts are a great place to put some of this. And the students have asked me this week about processing, the word processing, and what it means and how do you do it. And I was like, well, I'm not the person to ask really, but I said the way I do it personally is by, through a lot of art making and drawing and creative modes of being. But I think that it seems to have come down this week from a lot of different angles. The notion that there are massive amounts of trauma. A Czechoslovakian woman was talking to me this week, a person whose parents, lived through Hitler in Czechoslovakia. And then another person was talking to me about this boy that I taught murdered his father when he was 11 years old and then tried to murder his stepdad. And just talking about how do we process these massive life events. And it's a beautiful place to do it here because it's safe and a rather large container. Are you okay there? You've got stuff.
Yeah, I spilled water.
Oh, luckily it's water. Thank you all. Jen, do you have anything you want to share?
I guess I've just had the impulse to sort of fade my drawing out. So at first I almost took out a black piece of charcoal and just blacked out the whole page, but that seemed too heavy. So I tried to do it with my white pastel, but the lead I used graphite when I made my balloons and it wasn't covering very well. So then I went back in with my plastic eraser and tried to so I went back and forth a couple different times. And I think, yeah, I mean, you probably can't see it now. Maybe I did manage to. It's actually still under there, but it's really hard to see it.
Yeah, I see
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I can see it. It's almost like a sheer curtain in front of the drawing now.
Right, right. That's pretty accurate.
And
But I felt like I didn't want to not see it completely. I guess I was being protective of it. So it's like I was trying to bury it without fully covering it in some weird way.
yeah, well, remember what you said at the beginning?
Yeah, right. It's kind of like that.
Yeah, showing without showing the thing. And so it's
Yeah.
like going in and out of that world of the kind of the tangible representational aspect of something or the more physical part of something, even though we're drawing pretty abstractly right now, still it's close to that. Like I'm always surprised when people look at my drawings and they like, I see a shoe, and I'm like, really? Like in this like miasma of lines, you see a shoe, and I'm like, okay. But it's like we so badly want to have something to identify with. And I used to say to my mom, what if you're listening to Beethoven? Like, are you sitting there the whole time saying, they're running up a hill and now there's two of them and then they're going down. You're just listening and it's a sound. But when we make visual art, we use our eyes. And so we frequently want to be able to identify it in a different way than we use our ears. And I think there's a lot going on in the background that's really fruit, beautiful fruit, fertile fields with playing some of these exercises. And I think for me, when I started doing the exercises and practicing them, I realized when they were connected to some of the theoretical underpinnings in the book, not just the 1 minute exercise, which we'll do a fun one at the end here, really light and easy. But when I attached them to the theories or other things, it stretched me a little. Like some people said, oh, it's just burdensome. I don't want to do it because I think they felt they had to have a very strict answer or result. And I was like, no, it's more like getting your body and your brain to stretch out a little bit in there, and then you take whatever fruit it bears and you apply it wherever you or however you want, or it just feels good, and it's like, oh, that was a nice experience. For me, I know doing this, I had a lot of like different questions going through while I was doing it. I was like, well, I'm being destructive and I don't want to be destructive. And how do I be generative? How do I make this grow? And I was trying different things to make it come back together and make sense and be my breath. And then I thought, actually, this is my breath at times, like ragged and torn. And there were moments in this that were really, really like beautiful little tiny edges that are soft and fuzzy that the paper kind of turned into. And I was like, oh, there's gentleness in that destruction. I don't know what that means to me, but I was thinking about kind of the designations of people these days being a very firm thing. Like people are saying this is a type of person or a thing that's happening. And I'm like, wow, that's really grossly, I don't know the word, but like as a signifier, I guess we started with the word signifier in the beginning. It's not doing enough to serve a human, to identify them that way. So that's some of the stuff going through my brain. That was lovely. In our last few minutes, I want to do a 1 minute exercise that's just fun. And I was surprised by it because when I wrote the book, I didn't have business exercises in it. I had all art exercises. And a friend of mine who I work with regularly, is in business, and he said to me, "Why don't you apply these things to business? Because I need it." And so we wrote some together, and this is one of them. So what
That
did
was to be my question for you is like, I saw there's business in the book, and you are like, these are business exercises. And as someone who's known you a very, very long time, I was like, explain what that means to me, to you, and to what you're trying to put out there as far as business. What is business to you?
I know, I know. What is business? Business is
What is
business.
your business?
What is your business?
What is your
And
business?
it came from this guy, and it was basically things like we took 8 leadership skills and we just made them each an exercise, and we worked through different things together to figure out what they would be. So this was conflict resolution, and it's just fun to start playing with like resolving a conflict a different way. So we'll do it together. It's a 1-minute exercise, resolving conflict through shape. So spend 60 seconds drawing 2 opposing shapes on a page, sharp, angular shapes on one side, soft, flowing shapes on the other. In the center, find a shape that merges or balances these 2 opposing elements. Okay, you ready? It's going to be 1 minute. So we're going to go lickety split. Go. Yep, go. And you can do several versions if you want. One soft shape, one sort of hard angular shape, and then a shape that merges or balances the 2. And what was confusing to me was how I want to create balance, basically. And I didn't know when I started this. I still don't know, but trying to discover what your notion of balance is. And that's time, basically. So what I wrote in the book was that we are looking at teaching conflict resolution by visually addressing opposing forces and encouraging harmony through compromise and balance. So I can start with mine if you want. I don't know. I haven't started one yet, but here's mine. Okay. When I started it, my first one is at the top. I sort of tried to draw a shape that mimicked the 2 other shapes, like elements of like half and half of them, and put it in the middle. And all that felt like was that it kind of it stabilized their opposition to me. Felt like they were separated even more by trying to match them. And then at the bottom, I threw the other shape across at the other shape, like I put it on top of it, and they started integrating more and created a shape that feels like it's kind of pulling on the 2. Like it feels like it's pulling in both, like it's hard to describe in words for me, but let me see if I can go inside my head for a minute. I go to my inner resource. It tethered them to each other. It made them complicit in each other's actions and stuff rather than putting a big blockade in the middle of them. And so I think what I learned was instead of mimicking myself to find resolution, I might want to try to learn the other person's position more and mimic them more than mimicking myself. That would be my first statement. We'll see where it goes. Susan, you're up. What'd you experience? And anything goes. This isn't like I said at the beginning, I'm a maker. So I'm exploring this from an artistic standpoint and seeing where it goes. So I'm open to anything. Go ahead.
I think for me, I tried to do the, sharp on one side and the circles on the other, and then try to put like a wedge in between, but the wedge didn't feel right. So then I started trying to make it more of like a 3D and like build up. Like, how can we build up and over? But didn't quite make it there. So,
Well, hold on. Can you show us the 3D buildup as opposed to the wedge? Which one's? Oh, it's all one drawing.
yeah, it's all one drawing.
Gotcha. So, what did you start to notice is happening? Like, what's the big drawdown lines through the center that go down? Was that the 3D?
That was the wedge.
Okay.
So like hey, let's try to bring this together with something in the middle. The something in the middle really emphasized the gap more. So then I was like, well, what if it goes up or down or like add some volume? Is there a way to add volume and depth that could maybe bring more perspectives that could lead to something? But
So hold on a second. Just give me a quick, I heard you say volume and possibly volume and depth could possibly bring more perspective. What would be the equivalent of volume in a conflict? Just the word volume.
so volume as far as the volume of the like not the volume of the argument as far as like people yelling at each other, but as far as like the volume of the content,
Uh-huh.
like how much does the content take up? Like how well researched in the factual and like what kinds of depth can be attributed there? What kind of grounding? What is something that has more volume and weight? Like like a scientific stance, like half a liter has more volume than a quarter liter, and that translates into weight.
Gotcha. So obviously people don't have perspective, right? In an argument that isn't going well or a conflict. So looking at these notes, I'm wondering what's on the like what's missing that seems like it would be on the other side. Like obviously the sensitivity to the volume in some way matters. Like how do we get people to feel that quarter versus half, or when it's 110%?
Yeah.
How do we get them to actually acknowledge that? And I'm just wondering, I don't know if there's any answers in the drawing, like to look at the drawing and think what would get this group of entities to better understand that notion of volume and depth.
Well, I started trying to cut into the middle shape and trying to add more of a space there. So maybe some sort of holding space, some something physical or visual that emphasize that can be understood um, as cutting into the volume.
It's interesting some of the words you're using, cutting into. Like it'd be interesting to right to consider other forms of like the drawing. The drawing when I saw your round shapes, I just felt for them. I was like, they're so soft and vulnerable in that world of lines, like in angles and wedges, and you use the word cutting. And so what I would suggest is playing around with the drawing to put up things that like what is the psychic armor that's needed and what does it look like and how does it remain permeable and integrated and still be armor that protects the soft shapes, and just try different aspects of the drawing. The longer version of the drawing of the exercise goes into representing opposing forces and tensions between team members or departments, focusing on blending these opposites through gradual transitions and shifts in the composition, and start to try to like feel around a little and say like what comes alive for me. And it actually can be fun to play this way until a spark lights. Something will hit at one point and you'll realize, oh, by listening to yourself both verbally but also just in the drawings and seeing like all those factors that you're creating, which are very very clear in the drawing you drew to me, There's a tension, and then there's a beautiful sort of softness. And I know you well enough to know that that's probably how you feel. And using words like cutting and things and grounding and saying, how do I encourage more of that in this situation and in that environment overall? And sometimes we can make things happen that we would be surprised by. Like even what I call stupid sometimes or puppy things. Like I put cardboard up in the room once that made soft corners of the doorways so that we walked through softer doorways. And it just reminded me, and nobody noticed them. But for me, it was like I was reminded to soften the edges when I went into this space because it was angular and hard, and it embodied that hardness. It didn't embody softness. And so I brought softness in for me just as a reminder to remember that I need that in my space. So put a cardboard circle under your chair and stand in that fire. Yeah, we've gone over a little bit. We'll wrap up soon, but Jen, do you mind going?
Sure.
Is it okay
No.
to go over a little, you all, just a little bit? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we'll wrap up.
I just did. I don't think I understood the assignment. No, I just merged the forms. Like so I drew a triangle and I drew a loopy peanutty kind of form, and then I just put them together in the middle, which if I think about it is kind of aggressive. Like, I'll hold up what I did just so you can get what I'm right. You can see I have my triangle over here and I have my little loopy peanut, and then and I did it twice. I did two versions of it, and then a third version down here that looks like a unicorn. But I just almost like overlapping, merged them against their will, against their shape will.
Show the drawing again, Jen, if you don't mind.
No, sure. Can
Look
you
at
see
that
it?
center drawing. That center drawing.
It's so strange.
Do you feel one shape interjects into another?
Yeah, well, I guess in my head I was thinking that I was taking the swooping lines of my peanut form and I was adding some hard angles,
It's
you
interesting
know.
to see that the bottom shape there
Yeah.
intersects the top shape.
Oh, right. That was my second
Yeah.
one.
I don't, it's weird to me is that it looks like it intersects in one direction. It doesn't look like the top shape intersects. It looks like
Oh,
the
yeah.
top shape is being invaded.
It's being penetrated.
Yes, it's being penetrated, which is fascinating to me because if you look at the triangle, the very geometric triangle on the side, how the soft shape interrelates with the triangle,
Yeah, yeah.
they interrelate equally.
Oh, that's an interesting one.
Do you see
Sure.
do they both kind of cross each other equally? That doesn't feel like one is invading the other. Whereas in that one, it feels like it's a definite invasion. And I was wondering the solution for me of a conflict in that case would be how do I make that not be an invasion? How do I make that be a communion of these two forms? And in the triangle and the round shape touching each other in that corner, and maybe
Yeah.
it's the depth at which they cross one another. Maybe it's just the percentage of how they both feel like, they each have equal investment in that combined shape and all that.
Yeah, in both cases I feel like what I did is sort of there's like an aggression in it. It's not like it's not organic. It doesn't feel like there was an organic meeting of the minds at all.
Yeah,
I
but
don't
then
think.
that would be a fun thing to explore, right? If you're doodling tonight, when you get off the phone, just think, how do I make shapes meet one another
Yeah,
and
yeah,
not and
that's
not con you know not clash with each other? And these are the simple. I call them dumb. I know that's a bad word, but they're like puppies. I call them like innocents, where I see dynamics that I haven't paid attention to in my drawings or my creative way. I just draw and I get so far ahead of myself. I don't look at some of the baseline things that matter to me and are significant to me in the way I live my life. And then seeing them in abstraction, I go like, oh, that alphabet letter means something to me. I want to use that more consistently. Let me train my body and my way of working to include that in this case, we were talking about breath early on and then politics. So I'm thinking of like the invasion and the words we used about those two shapes. That how do I find a way to have them be aligned with my beliefs, basically, and the ways that I feel about the world, so that they are harmonious rather than just kind of a habit that I have since I started drawing. So thank you all for playing ball tonight. I'd like us all to just say one last thing when we leave about anything that was meaningful or troublesome, either way, I don't care, but just significant to you. It can be good or bad, but just significant to you tonight that was a marker for you so that you have it stated. And I think for me, I'm learning what abstraction is for me, you know, and I think I waited a long time in my life to get there where I put myself to it and I started really looking at it and trying to understand what it is. And so having this time with you all meant the world to me, to chisel at some of these little tiny pieces and see how they affect me in the long run so I can go inside and play with them now. So thank you both. And then whoever wants to go, or if you don't, that's cool too.
I'll go. I really think the book is great, Tom. I just have to say that to start with. But I think for me personally, the exercises and like what we did tonight, I guess I kind of said this earlier, it's things that I won't come to on my own. So the prompts and this even the discussion we're having tonight about the drawings that we did make, it's like very eye-opening for me. And you're right, I may doodle some more tonight. I may mess around with those shapes, but it's just very helpful because it's not a kind of thing that that I would discover, you know, left to my own devices or whatever. Yeah, yeah. So I appreciate it. Yeah, and it was great to meet you, Susan. And
Good
this
to
is
meet you
really
too. I
really
feel like
fun.
we may have run across each other at some point in time. You seem familiar, but um,
Could be.
You know.
possible. Tom connects all a lot.
So
But
Susan?
I it was it's always lovely to spend time with you and your mind and how you approach the world and holding space to approach the world in a different way than I would normally. So, especially considering all of the things in life, but and you know, being able to do it here with you know, wonderful folks around. Which actually we went to. I don't know. Have you ever gone to ecstatic dance?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we went to an ecstatic dance here with something called the Paper Ham Puppet Company. So they had all their puppets that you could try on and be embodied in these different fantastical creatures while also doing ecstatic dance with the Living Arts Collective on the Day of the Dead, and you know, had wonderful. It's interesting to feel the different integrations with the embodiment there, and then this with the visual practice, different lines between them, and having a supportive person throughout both. So, and both new and old supportive people. Oh yeah, here he's got a picture of me with the. That's me.
great.
We need to find the one of you. He put on the same mask at some point, but
Love them, love them. There's thank you for sharing. You reminded me of Gaga Dance as something to look at. Gaga is an Israeli dance troupe, and it was free during COVID, but now they charge like $9 or something. I don't know, but it's fun and it's aligned with ecstatic dance modes. Thank you all for joining tonight. It was lovely. Keep coming back if you have any questions. I would do this again too if we just want to have a good night and have some fun, invite some people. I'll send this out to people who it'll be shared so that you can review it if you want to see anything. But thanks again and have a beautiful night. I love you all.
Thank you.
Be good.
love you. So, bye, Tom.
Bye, y'all. Bye, Ryan. Bye, Puggo.
The pugs need to stand.
Night, night. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye, bye.